history, worships peaks, and ignores foundations. It chants the names of emperors, conquerors, and reformers, but it rarely pauses to examine the quiet strata beneath them. The man whose only achievement was that they did not collapse when annihilation came. Gaius Octavius, a Roman military tribune active during the Second Punic War, belongs precisely to this ignored category. He was not a visionary, not a commander, not a legislator, not a reformer. He didn't bend history, he did something far more fundamental. He survived Rome's worst catastrophe and preserved continuity. In the brutal arithmetic of power, this mattered more than genius. To understand Gaius Octavius is to understand how empires are seeded long before they are crowned. He was born into Octavi Rufi, a plebeian but respectable Roman family rooted in Velitrae. This was not an ancient patrician house like the Cornelii or Claudi, not a parvenu clan swollen with sudden wealth. It was a family of magistrates, equestrians, and minor officials, men who served the state competently and advanced slowly. This distinction matters. Rome was not only ruled by nobles, it was sustained by families like the Octavi, whose loyalty to the Republic wasn't ideological but structural. They survived because Rome survived. Rome survived because men like them refused to abandon when it bled. By the late 3rd century BC, Rome faced an existential threat unlike anything it had encountered before. Hannibal Barca didn't merely defeat Roman armies, he systematically dismantled Roman assumptions. Trivia shattered confidence, like Trisimene humiliated command, but Cannae obliterated illusion. It was not a battle, it was a controlled slaughter. The Roman machine, its consular leadership, its massed infantry doctrine, and its faith in brute manpower collapsed in a single afternoon. Gaius Octavius was there. He was not a consul or legate. He was a military tribune, a middle ranking officer, one of the many charged with maintaining order, discipline, and command continuity within the legions. This role was not glamorous. Tribunes didn't decide strategy, they executed it. They were the connective tissue between the command and mass. When the Roman center folded under Hannibal's dour envelopment, the connective tissue was torn apart. Units ceased to exist. Authority dissolved. Panic became structural. Most men died. Many fled. Some surrendered. A handful resisted the psychological collapse even after the physical defeat was complete. Gaius Octavius was among them. Ancient sources tell us when Carthaginian forces entered the Roman camp after the battle, Octavius and his fellow tribune Publius Sempronius Tuditanus refused to accept annihilation as fate. They armed themselves, rallied remnants, and cut their way through the encircling enemy to reach Canusium, where survivors regrouped under Roman command. This act wasn't heroic in a poetic sense, it was grim, desperate, and uncelebrated. But it preserved something essential, the idea that Rome still had men who didn't psychologically concede defeat. Cannae was not merely a military disaster, it was a test of Roman identity. Entire senatorial families vanished in a day. Political continuity was threatened. Rome teetered on the edge of becoming another fallen Italian state city absorbed into Carthaginian hegemony. That didn't fall was not because of brilliance in that moment, because enough individuals refused to internalize the loss as final. Gaius Octavius represented that refusal. After Cannae, he didn't rise rapidly. There is no record of him exploiting survival for political gain. He didn't become consul. He didn't command armies in Spain or Africa. Later years in 2205 BC, he appears again, serving in Sicily under the praetor Lucius Aemilius Pappus. Sicily at this time was a logistical and administrative theatre, not a battle glory. Service was necessary, unglamorous, crucial. Rome's war machine depended on such postings. Grain, fleets, supply lines, and order mattered, such as legions. This is a pattern worth emphasizing. Gaius Octavius consistently occupied roles that preserved systems rather than expanded them. He was not an architect of conquest, he was a stabilizer during crisis and recovery. History remembers conquerors because they alter maps, it forgets stabilizers because they prevent maps from dissolving. Yet without stabilizers, no conquest endures. The deeply significance of Gaius Octavius emerges not from his own career, but from his position in lineage that culminated in Augustus. He was the great grandfather of the first Roman emperor. The fact alone forced later Roman historians to preserve his memory, however faintly. Had Augustus never existed, Gaius Octavius would have vanished entirely into archival dust. This uncomfortable truth exposes how power rewrites ancestry. When Augustus rose, his enemies searched for weakness. Mark Antony, in particular, attacked Augustus not by challenging his authority directly, but by mocking his origins. Antony claimed that Octavian's ancestors were freedmen and rope makers from Thurii. This insult wasn't random. In Roman political culture, lineage was legitimacy. To rule Rome was to embody Rome's history. If Augustus' ancestors were common tradesmen, then his authority was artificial. Antony's insults reveal something crucial. Augustus' lineage was not unassailable. It was respectable, but it wasn't sacred. Octavi were not kings in waiting. They were climbers, survivors, functionary. Their rises were incremental, not destined. And this is precisely why Gaius Octavius matters. He represented the pre-imperial phase of power accumulation, where a family doesn't yet know it will rule the world, but behaves in a way that makes such rule possible. He didn't gamble the family's future on reckless ambition. He did not disgrace himself. He didn't defect in crisis. He didn't die when death was the default outcome. He preserved status, continuity, and reputation across generations. Power is rarely born in a single generation, it accretes. Augustus could become Augustus because his ancestors hadn't burned bridges, broken loyalty, or collapsed under pressure. They were present at Rome's darkest hours, remain Roman afterwards. This mattered more than glory. This is a brutal lesson here, one that modern minds resist because it's unromantic. Is often parasitic on endurance. This man who changes history stands on the backs of men who merely survived it. Those men receive no statues. Their reward is invisibility, and descendants who inherit an intact platform rather than a rubble. Gaius Octavius was one of such a man. He lived in an era when Rome nearly died. He didn't save it, he didn't lead it, he didn't reform it, he didn't betray it, he endured it. In systems built to last centuries, endurance isn't passive. It's an active refusal to disintegrate when annihilation is offered as default outcome. This is why Augustus could later claim to have restored the Republic while destroying it. He inherited not just blood, but a tradition of disciplined survival. Octavie had learned, long before empire, how to remain standing when institutions failed. Augustus merely weaponized that lesson at scale. In the final analysis, Gaius Octavius is not merely a figure of admiration, he is a figure of instruction. He teaches that before power consolidates, before myths are written, before empires rise, there exists a long silent phase where only requirement isn't to fall apart. Most fail at this stage. Rome did not. The Octavi did not. Augustus was the beneficiary. History remembers emperors, power remembers survivors, and in the cold, unsentimental logic of domination, survival under catastrophe is the first and most decisive victory.